Welcome back to the Tiga Tactics podcast, a show about self-defense for civilians by civilians. We discuss all things personal protection, including martial arts, combat sports, and street combatives. Our resident martial arts nerds, MANs, are not here today. It's just me. I am your co-host today, or I'm your only host today, retired Army Special Force soldier and champion obstacle course racing athlete Evan Ultra-OCR man Perperis. Long story short, we did record a second episode this month, but due to personal life, restarting school for the semester, etc., I did not have time to edit this specific episode. So while I'm editing, I still wanted to put out a second episode this month. So it's just going to be a quick solo episode. I wanted to talk to you about why Tiga Tactics. Why did I choose Tiga Tactics? Long story short, for those who have listened to all the episodes and listened to, I think I'm on episode 6 or something, where we talk about my specific bio, I've got a fair number of qualifications, both within the military and then on the martial arts side. And I'm not part of the Tiga Tactics brand from the beginning, right? Conrad and Patrick are the ones who stood it up, and I came on as a later addition. So I chose to align myself with them. So I kind of wanted to go through why I specifically chose to go towards Tiga Tactics when there's a lot of self-defense brands out there that I could have theoretically aligned myself with and help produce content for them. And maybe listening to this makes you want to contribute to Tiga Tactics, whether it be attending seminars or taking more online courses, etc., in some way. Or maybe you're trying to convince someone else, maybe you're already kind of sold on the Tiga Tactics brand and the methodology, and you're trying to convince someone else, but you're not quite sure of what to put into words to kind of convince them. You can either show them this episode, or you can use talking points from this episode to kind of explain to them why you like to train Tiga Tactics and why it supports your overall martial arts goals and self-protection goals. So the first reason I kind of was attracted to Tiga Tactics was they had better inputs, right? So when we talk about the history of martial arts and we talk about people coming up with systems and styles, a lot of them are trying to guess at what the bad guys are doing. Rather than guessing, Tiga Tactics looked at real-world attack videos. So they before they started figuring out solutions, before they started figuring out, jab hook, cross hook, uppercut, double leg takedowns, etc., they were like, well, what does a bad guy attack look like? So they kind of identified the problem, they framed the problem up front. And if you're on the military side, that's essentially what the military does when they look at problems. They try to figure out, well, what's the issue we're facing first before we start figuring out how to solve it. So I think with Tiga Tactics basically, and they're not the only brand that does this, that looks at real-world attack videos, but they had better inputs compared to stuff that was maybe created in the 80s and earlier. We did not have access to as much CCTV and kind of live leak type footage where it actually showed the way bad guys attack. So I think when you're starting off identifying the problem and you're getting those better inputs from the beginning, you will ultimately get a better output for protecting against the problem. That was the first kind of big thing that drew me in, is they're looking at the real world patterns based off of how people are attacking as their starting point for developing a solution. Then the next kind of big thing they looked at was developing the solutions, and they use Hick's Law. So if you're following me on social media, Ultra-OCR man, which is on my Instagram and my Facebook, you may have seen I wrote a article for ShivWorks, another brand that I highly recommend, where I talk about Hick's Law, or Hick-Hyman Law. Essentially, it is a simple solution to a simple problem, and I kind of look at ShivWorks through that lens to see if what they're teaching at their Edge Weapons Overview seminar sticks to Hick's Law. So, basically when you're stressed out and stakes are on and things are things are violent, chaotic, you want a simple solution that you can go to. And if that's not working, you can go to something else that's also simple. And if that's not working, you kind of go back to the first solution. And you kind of bounce back and forth between that until you get what you want. This isn't combat sports where you need 30 different variations of, how to set up specific moves. If you have 2 and they're your go-to and you execute them violently, repeatedly alternating between the 2, you'll essentially get what you want in a real-world encounter. So at ShivWorks as well as Tiga Tactics both pass Hick's Law, and that's what I really liked about Tiga Tactics. It was simple, it was effective, there wasn't a whole lot of fluff. It just stripped away a lot of the art. With martial arts schools, they're designed to keep students for a long term, for multiple reasons. One, development of skill. They're a business, right? They have to keep themselves open, so they need you to keep coming back So they need to kind of drip feed you the information. And the other reason, there is a lot to learn. There's essentially endless amounts of information to learn. But for people who are not going to spend a whole lot of time training, or maybe just want a little bit of training just so they have a little more self-confidence, so they have a plan when they walk down the street, and that transfers over into confidence, and that confidence may transfer over into looking like a harder target, and then the attack never even happens. So I like that Tiga Tactics had a bunch of very simple solutions for the most common types of attacks, which we called our flagship courses, right? Punch defense, knife defense, firearm threat defense, and then club defense. So the most common attacks you see on video, right? And they didn't pick those first and then try to find the solutions. They looked at the video of common attacks, and those are the top 4 attacks that come up. So those are the top 4 solutions they developed. With a simple solution, I liked that both Conrad and Patrick both had studied a whole bunch of different styles. Sometimes when you get someone who only studies one style and they are a complete master at it, right, like grandmaster, whatever, they've been doing it for 20, 30 years, they are completely sold by the system, and they sometimes have trouble seeing any flaws within it, right, because they're so invested. They spend so much time, energy, effort putting into that system, they have trouble seeing their own flaws. I like that Conrad and Patrick are what they call non-denominational martial artists, right? They'll learn any system, any style if it interests them, and they'll spend, years or sometimes decades exploring that system and seeing what they have to offer and what benefits they bring. And from that, they took a lot of the learning and training principles and pulled it into Tiga Tactics, right? That slow, smooth, fast progression. We do that in jiu-jitsu. The slow speed, right, is very Tai Chi-like. The smooth speed, a lot more like drilling will do in Brazilian jiu-jitsu or practicing forms. And then the fast speed is kind of like your combat pace speed or combat sports pace speed, right? Your pressure-tested speed level. So I like that they distilled it from a lot of different styles. That was important to me. Because if you haven't looked at a whole bunch of styles, then you're not sure what other styles have to offer and what benefits they might bring, right? So if you only know boxing, if you just know punching, then you're not going to be able, you won't consider things like takedowns. You won't consider things like weapons. You won't consider things like kicks, right? But if you've explored systems that have those in there, then you can look at your plan and be like, okay, well, maybe I'm still not using kicks, but at least now I know why I'm not using kicks. I'm not using kicks maybe because it puts me on one leg, puts me off balance, right? Because you get taken down and stuff like MMA. Or maybe you never know what type of flooring you're going to be on, so you're worried about slipping, right? So you can remove things and distill things from a place of knowledge, not a place of guesswork or a place of, well, I'm only doing this because this is what my teacher passed down to me. I also think it's really easy to teach others, right? So the system, Tiga Tactics, what we teach is not very complicated. And if I'm going to teach my wife, if I'm going to teach my parent, or someone who doesn't plan on spending the next 5 years in martial arts or 10 years in martial arts, right? If they're like, hey, I just want to come to like 1 seminar a year, 2 seminars a year, whatever it may be, this is a good system to teach them. You can bring someone in, train them for a weekend, and when they leave a in-person training seminar for Tiga Tactics, you will walk out better prepared. And even if you have the deep base of martial skills, I think the way we teach and the input we put from real-world videos and the pre-attack indicators we talk about, and the situational awareness tips we talk about, all that stuff, and the reps we do, all that stuff will make you more prepared when you walk out the door. I can't say that about every martial arts seminar I've went to. I've been to some really cool ones, and some of them were a lot of fun, and I learned some really cool stuff. But sometimes it was more of an exposure than actual learning and training. So you get exposed to a whole bunch of new moves, and then you walk out the door, and you're like, yeah, I couldn't execute that if we were doing pressure-tested sparring or rolling. But it's cool, and it's something I can practice for the future. But that's longer-term stuff. With Tiga Tactics, when you walk out the door, you will walk out and be like, I feel better, I feel safer, I feel more protected than I did when I walked in the door. That was my experience all the times I showed up before I became an instructor. And even as an instructor now, I'll go and just listening to Patrick and Conrad, I will pick up stuff and be like, oh, that's a really good way to teach things. Oh, I really like the way he explained this. And I will take that, and when I teach other people, whether it be Medusa, Western Piper methods, or as of this recording, I've recently started teaching kids as far as my local community there. I have a small group of about 10 kids that I teach. I'll pick up some little tips there and bring them back. And when I teach, I use the tips I've learned from Patrick and Conrad just from interacting with them. And then on a personal note, whenever I go and hang out with them, or I live on the opposite side of the country, when I hang out with them, we discuss all things nerdy martial arts, and it's a lot of fun. Everything from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, WMAC Masters, Bloodsport, basically all 80s, 90s martial arts, pop culture. And I get to kind of nerd out and talk about those things. So I learn not only some of like the history of martial arts, but also like nuanced technique. And then we just discuss theory and opinions and looking at different styles. And whenever you approach Conrad and Patrick both, and you talk about specific styles, what I really like is they can always find something good in there, right? So maybe not every style is the best for every situation, but they can always look through and be like, okay, well, maybe I don't like even 80-90% of this, but I really like this one aspect of it, and maybe that gets pulled into the methodology or the way we teach Tiga Tactics, and maybe not. Maybe it's just something to put in your hip pocket for later, for when you're teaching or when you're kind of exploring your own art and figuring out why you want to do martial arts or why you want to continue to train martial arts. And lastly, I like that it's available online, right? So not all of us have access to great martial arts gyms. I do. I live near Florian Martial Arts, a great gym for training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. But they specifically teach those two arts, those two styles. You know, as far as like combative work, blade work, or kind of real-world self-defense, those are different. They're nuanced topics within the martial arts world. And that stuff is typically not available locally. Like more martial arts gyms are a little more sport or kind of art oriented. Little less have to do with like real world combative stuff, which I understand. One, it's combative stuff tends to be a little bit simpler. And two, you know, when you're looking at real world attack videos, that's not something like every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you don't want to go in and like watch people getting shot, stabbed, attacked. It's, you know, it's always the most pleasant pastime to watch that stuff, to try to learn from it. So I feel like more gyms and more places tend to teach a little more art, a little more combat sport, a little more self-development, discipline, all the positive attributes you hear about learning martial arts. I feel like a lot of other gyms bring that, but like very niche topics tend not to be available in in-person training. So I like that it's online, right? If you want, like, you probably don't have a local Medusa or Western Piper methods teacher in your area, but I teach that online. And I like that Tiga Tactics is taught online. When I found Tiga Tactics, I was still active duty in the military. And especially as a military member, we have so many tasks that we have to be good at. You know, hand-to-hand fighting is just a tiny component of your job in the military. It is very, very small. You know, even for something like a mission, like a direct action mission, where like a special force team is going to infiltrate something, capture a bad guy. Ideally, there's zero hand-to-hand, right? That's essentially, your hand-to-hand only comes into play only if things start going wrong. And really, multiple layers have to go wrong, right? I have to not be able to use my long gun. I can't transition to a secondary, a knife or a pistol. And then at that point, I'm in hand-to-hand. And that's assuming my buddy is not available there to just like to tackle the guy or pull him off me or shoot him himself. So it's a small component of active duty military training. So when I found Tiga Tactics, I was looking for something simple that I could train and then maybe pass off to other people and be like, well, this is, you know, maybe you don't have time to go to like the full Army combatives courses. Maybe you don't have time to go to the gym every day. But here's something you can do. You know, the Army loves all these online training modules that a lot of times we just kind of play in the background and don't really pay attention to and breeze through. I was like, I really want something that would bring value and maybe I can share and pass off to people. Be like, well, here's a good thing you can learn. It'll actually improve your safety, actually improve your ability to protect yourself, but isn't going to take a full week, a full year, whatever it may be. So I like the fact that it's online, which means anyone, anywhere in the United States and the world can take it and develop and get better without having to pay for airfare and all the other stuff that comes with travel and going to seminars. Online accessibility was just a huge reason I really like the brand. And with Patrick, Conrad, and I living on, well, the two of them live on the West Coast, I live on the East Coast. We are geographically separated. I like that it allows us to reach multiple audiences in multiple areas simultaneously and realistically anytime you want, right? If you want to train Tiga Tactics on midnight on a Tuesday, you can, because there's an online program, and the way they structured the online program is kind of step by step. So you can go and sign up. You can sign up as you're listening to this right now and start training Tiga Tactics like literally right this second. So that was just another benefit. And lastly, they're just fun, right? I mentioned hanging out with the guys both in the seminar and then after the seminar. It's just a good group that I like to spend time with. For those of you who listen to our Dragon Fest episode, yeah, that was so much fun hanging out in Dragon Fest in California and reliving the old 90s era martial arts days with some kind of B-list, maybe even C-list celebrities there. So if you like martial arts, if you like combatives, if you like expanding on your skill set, I think Tiga Tactics is a good place for you to come hang out, right? We have a free podcast. If you signed up for any of the online courses, you get access to the Facebook group, which is another amazing opportunity. I know there are times in the past they have given away free webinars if you're in the Facebook group, right? So if you're not signed up for at least one Tiga Tactics and in the Facebook group, I would sign up for something. If you're just like a podcast listener, I'd sign up for something on the website just so you can get access to the Facebook group, because sometimes you'll get access to free webinars as opposed to having to pay the $20 or $30 fee that would normally cost you to access that webinar. That's kind of my once over the world of kind of why I like Tiga Tactics. A lot of it has to do with the inputs. A lot of it has to do with the solutions. A lot of it has to do with how effective it is in a very short period. I will say, Tiga Tactics, the combatives portion is like what I would call like the tip of the spear. Like that's what you're using. But in order for that tip to be sharp and effective, ideally, if you have the time, money, and effort, ideally it's supported by pressure testing in combat sports. So, going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai gym, karate, whatever martial arts you do, ideally that is backing up. So you get used to doing things like moving your hands and feet at the same time, which doesn't sound complicated until you try to tell a new group of adults at the gym that they need to punch and step forward at the same time. And then all of a sudden it feels like they're starting something that is extremely complicated. So I think that combat sports, I'm not saying like if you just train Tiga Tactics, you'll be, a master fighter. But if you train Tiga Tactics, you'll know what you're going to use when the situation requires actual violence. And then if it's supported by a base of combat sports or other martial arts, you will have pressure tested, you will have been in a whole bunch of different situations, and you will have a pool of timing, like the distance management, and all the other aspects that allow you to like strike and defend yourself successfully, right? So I think all of that sort of supports it. So highly recommend you sign up for their courses. Obviously, I've taken a bunch of their courses. I'm an instructor with them. I would also pick up my book, The Combatives Blueprint, which you'll see a bunch of Tiga Tactics recommendations in there. And then if you want to hear more from me, you can check out my Patreon, patreon.com/GreekCombatives. I will be at the October 18th, 19th seminar in Fullerton, California. That is Patrick's home gym, I believe. We're going to go out there and do the tool set training tour. So talk about defense with a flashlight, talk about defense with a knife, talk about defense with or I guess it's not defense, it's offense, right? Because I'm using it as the weapon. But yeah, I'm defending myself and then using a small impact tool like a flashlight, a pen, a knife to defend myself. And those are my favorite topics, kind of that small impact, because it's so transferable over, right? The same movements, the kind of reverse edge with a knife, reverse grip with a knife, work with a flashlight, work with a pen, can work with any sort of small, hard, metal-bodied thing that you can use as an impact weapon. So hope to see some of you in Fullerton, California, October 18th and 19th. I'm going to drop some links down below. Check out my Patreon, check out my book, Combatives Blueprint, check out Run If You Can, Destroy If You Must. It's my runner's guide, but I would honestly, I call it my situational awareness guide. For those of you who want more situational awareness tips, you can check that out. Also links below. And then stay tuned. I know we've got a whole bunch of stuff in the works. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to talk about yet. There's a new course coming out, which we filmed already. There is, if you like my book, Run If You Can, Destroy If You Must, you'll like that course. There's also more structure, I'll say. Ranks, can I say that? I don't know. Am I leaking stuff too early? I'll deal with Patrick and Conrad if I'm leaking stuff too early. But there's more stuff coming out that's reasons to get a little more involved. And, maybe you don't necessarily want to be an instructor, but you want ways to mark progress, we've got some stuff in the works that's going to be highlighting that and kind of rewarding you for your efforts. So lots of cool stuff coming down the pipe. I'm excited. I wish I could tell you more at this point, but I'm not 100% sure what I'm allowed to say. So you just get a little sneak peek. And then I've also got some articles coming out on the Tiga Tactics website, so make sure you're checking that periodically. I will share them once they come up. But yeah, please, even if you're not signing up for anything, please share our content around. That's an easy way to support a brand, whatever brand you like, on whatever topic you like. Liking their stuff, commenting, sharing, those are all free. Great way to support brands you like that you want to continue to tell them to continue to produce more content. All right, that's it. I'm going to get going. I ran my mouth for 20 minutes. And check out Vulpes Training as well, some of their training products. Again, I'll drop all those links down below. And Tenneco knives as well. Okay, we'll catch you guys later.